And we should be live. Let's see where we're at here.
Going live in 1 minute.
Yep, in 1 minute. So apparently we don't go live early like we used to. But we do have some news. Do.
Hopefully he doesn't have trouble so far. Yes. Okay.
Okay.
I will send
Good.
to email now.
Good. Early like we used to. Okay. There's a sound check.
magiccat@aol.com. Can you send the link to that?
Magic Cat.
MAJJIK.
We are live right now, so
it says going live.
no, we're hot. Okay.
Hi guys.
Hello everyone.
Whoever is joining us on this beautiful Friday.
Now you get to watch the back end of
the master at work.
Because this is stuff that yours truly should have had sorted out prior to now. But anyways, Betsy's going to carry on, make some small chat with everyone while I...
MAJJIK. I hope everyone's week's going good.
Yes.
I was on vacation last week.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry about the sound. It was AOL. It was a crazy area I was in. I was actually up in Coos Bay, and it was easily the spottiest cell service I've ever been in.
Is that correct?
Nope.
Because Jared doesn't know how to spell.
MAJJIK.
Like that?
Nope.
Gosh, dang it.
So close.
Why this thing doesn't have a wire? I can put it in front of you. There you go. Here, I will get you the link. But anyways, yeah, Betsy went up to Coos Bay, set back lots of awesome pictures.
We had a blast. It really was the best area. Can't wait to go back. I will not be going out on the charter with you though.
Is this right there?
Yep.
Okay, put in a link.
Oh.
At least you misspelled too. But anyways, yeah. So Betsy went up to Coos Bay, and apparently you can go up there during, what is it, male singing season or something?
No, it's the whale migration.
Yeah, whale mating season. Or
the whale migration actually comes right down the Gulf of Alaska, and Coos Bay is on the Gulf of Alaska. It's right on the edge of the Gulf of Alaska.
Mm-hmm.
And so the whales migrate so close to the shore of Coos Bay that they say it happens in December. So I doubt I'll ever be there at that time, but they say that it is deafening.
Well, we grew up in a small cow town.
Yes. A single cow town.
Yes. And you can, when the cows are in season,
you can hear them all over.
Yeah, you hear them out there kind of mooing loudly. And so I can imagine they probably look at the whales as the same thing. There's probably guys who in Africa who have elephants or rhinoceros get to witness the same thing, or lions and whatever else. But that would be fun. But I think while we wait for him to come on, let's talk about some news, huh?
So many weird news.
Now, hey man, okay, all three newses that we pulled up are depressing. I should have looked up.
Mine's
Florida
pretty
Man.
depressing, yeah.
Yeah, yours is the least depressing of the three.
And I don't know if it can get more depressing.
The least. But anyways, yeah. So okay, we'll start out with the worst of all of them. Okay, so apparently
it says invalid meeting ID. It keeps telling him.
Okay.
Still trying to get our author on. We're having Paul Blake Smith on today. He wrote an interesting book about Eisenhower's encounter with aliens, which happened prior to the Roswell incident.
Yeah.
Which is super interesting because I think it kind of set the stage for the Roswell incident and how quickly people responded.
Paul Blake Smith joined.
There he is.
Hey, he's here. All right, he made it. Yeah, and this is interesting. Hey, this is good news. We don't have to talk about sad news now.
We'll tell you our sad news at the end.
Oh, let me adjust our screen in here.
I was gonna
I want to
slide on over.
Paul as the big one and us as the small one. But yeah, he's coming on. But anyways, yeah, there are some very sad stories going on. And on the news, you know. So I guess
Can you hear us, Paul?
Oh, there was a UFO spotted in Utah the other day.
There was?
There's been 2 spotted in Utah the other day. I've seen people put videos up. Now, none of them have been like the real close ones. Most of them have been kind of a ways out with the UFO kind of moving across the horizon. Another one, maybe it was the view of the camera that I saw, but it looked really quite small, and it was and it kind of flew towards them. But you know, perspective on big panoramic videos, I don't know how big it was, but I've seen those come across. And he is here. We're waiting for him to log on or to come on. But yeah, so Paul Blake Smith is an author. He has he's wrote quite a few books. You know, we've got President Eisenhower, Close Encounters, MO41, the bombshell before Roswell. I'd like to know what that is. I've been listening to a book about Roswell lately, and kind of about the people of note who have tie-ins with the Roswell incident.
It's interesting because I've listened to several of his interviews, and I'm reading the President Eisenhower one.
Mm-hmm.
It feels very much like a lead-in to the Roswell incident. Like perhaps the encounter in Cape Girardeau took place, and they used that as a guide stone to create a fast response team that we saw in Roswell. It was unprecedented response by the military. Well,
yeah, for back then. When was it? Like 49 or?
I think it was in 49.
Yeah, and well, it's the funny thing is how like day 1 and day 2 a story comes out, and then day 3, was it day 3? It was like squashed and rewritten.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was everything was confiscated. Reporters were threatened. The narrative was changed entirely. The people that, you know, claim to have been witness to it,
yeah, that rancher,
were deposed. And
okay, all right, okay, so we've got another one that's a replay of us forever. So I don't know what that is. Is he sending you any messages about him fighting with his stuff? Anyways, so again, we're tormented by
yes,
by the computer
technology.
And stuff. Yeah.
Tell us one of your weird stories while we try to work this out.
So the weird story. So this this guy, he took his children down to Mexico. They went to Baja. I don't know if they were down there on vacation. His name is Matthew Taylor. Okay, I'll just read the story. A California surfing school owner was charged Wednesday with killing his 2 young children with a spear gun in Mexico because he believed they would become monsters. Matthew Taylor Coleman, 40, of Santa Barbara, is facing a federal charge of the foreign murder of U.S. nationals, the U.S. Attorney Office said in a statement. Coleman confessed to the FBI during an interview that he took his 2-year-old son and 10-month-old daughter to Rosarito, Mexico, where he shot a spear fishing gun into them. Gosh, dang it.
Look, he looks so normal.
I don't like
Ted
this.
Bundy looked normal too.
Yeah. Coleman said he believed his children were going to grow into monsters, so he had to kill them, according to the court document. A farm worker found the children's bodies on Monday at a ranch near Rosarito in Baja California. Oh, so
He drove from Santa Barbara with his 2 children, likely under the cover of night, down to Rosarito, checked into a hotel, and then killed his kids down there.
And all this is just heinous. It just makes you sick to think about.
Where the weird comes in is the next part.
But so he's doing the FBI interview, and he explained that he was enlightened by QAnon and Illuminati conspiracy theories and was receiving visions and signs revealing that his wife, and then it just says AC, and I don't know if
It's
they're
probably to protect her identity.
her initials, possessed serpent DNA and had passed it on to his children, according to the affidavit. Now, we have done a fun show on the DNA lizard stuff. And then this would have been about a year and a half ago.
And I'm preparing a show on QAnon. So when I first read this, I was like, God, there must be a dark side of QAnon that I haven't yet found. Because QAnon, now the Illuminati, I don't know much about it, but QAnon focuses on the New World Order and the reset of, the kind of the entire earth to be maintained by one group of people, and not on serpent DNA.
Yeah. Now the serpent DNA, that's on the deep parts of the internet where people make videos of Justin Bieber blinking sideways, right?
Yeah, but that's not QAnon.
Well,
That's David Icke kind of stuff.
yeah. And so I don't know what they're
I wonder if he just truly I mean, obviously he's some sort of mental health issues, but if he's just looking a way to explain away his behavior, like maybe he had this psychotic break. I mean, obviously he said he's hearing voices.
Or maybe he was mad at his wife and did the vengeance thing, and now he's just seeking an excuse that won't give him the chair. But you know what? He killed a 10-month-old.
Oh my gosh.
Not to be all radical, but you go killing a 10-month-old and a 4-year-old or any of that. And I want to see you sitting in a chair before McDonald's hands me the burger through the window.
It's pretty fast.
I'm sorry. I mean, it's an atrocity. It's horrible.
And I think he probably likely thought he would get away with it. Like maybe they wouldn't be found and he was going to.
That argues why he went to Mexico.
Yeah. So that is a calculated thing that you do, not in the moment where you believe that they have serpent DNA, but you have to calculate that out. And I think he just figured that they wouldn't be found and he could just say they went missing in the night or whatever.
I don't know. You, sir, are disgusting.
Yeah. My story.
All right, Betsy's story. This one's
It's a little
funner, a little better.
Okay, so there's a 39-year-old man who gosh, what is it? What is his name?
Where's the happy, funny stories at the week?
I know. He had been reported missing, according to Euronews Weekly. No foul play.
When was he reported missing?
It doesn't really go into detail of when or how long he was missing.
No, move your phone away from that wire.
But what happens is a couple weeks ago, these people were viewing this giant kind of macrame dinosaur. It's like a paper mache dinosaur. It's a statue in Barcelona suburb, and they noticed a leg, and they were, I guess the statue itself has these openings, likely for air circulation, so it doesn't just collapse in on itself.
Now, let me nerd out for a second. I've shown the statue on the screen for those watching. It is a Stegosaurus.
Mm-hmm.
The statue looks to be about at its back 10 foot tall, probably 30 foot long. Humana. Go on.
So they noticed the leg, and as they get it, they can see it through like one of the cracks. And as they get closer, they also noticed a foul smell coming from inside the statue. Now, firefighters were called to the scene and forced to cut open the statue to reveal the body inside.
Shown on the screen now, it looks like it is the right rear knee of this poor dinosaur.
So the Spanish media has reported that, they're leaving him unnamed. The unnamed man had somehow dropped his cell phone inside the giant figure, fell inside while trying to retrieve it, and was unable to climb out for help.
So
That's a shitty way to die.
The poor guy died suffocating inside of a dinosaur statue. I mean, the Stegosaurus is a noble and majestic creature that no longer exists, but still.
Was he yelling? Did people think that was part of like the special effects? Like, wow.
Or what if it was at nighttime? Or
yeah, but how long? It would take a long time to pass away, wouldn't it?
Not if, well, say you're suspended upside down. I imagine it could happen in a matter of upside down, constricted inside of there, so your breathing would be irregular, blood would pool. I imagine. Remember that kid that fell in the wrestling mat at a school somewhere? Like he would keep his shoes behind the wrestling mat.
Oh, yes.
And he fell in there, and they looked for him. It took him a while to find him, a couple days, I think. And I think they estimated it took like 45 minutes to an hour for a young,
for him to
kid.
Asphyxiate.
Yeah, and that's just the blood flow, the constant pressure with the lack of oxygen intake. You pass out, and yeah. So
Laura says, how do they know he wasn't shoved in there and kept from getting out? That's my question. First of all,
got some mafia, mafia guy.
What type of picture are you taking?
Put him in the dinosaur.
What type of picture are you taking that your cell phone falls into a statue?
I'm sure he was doing one of these, the selfie over the head number, and then it fell over his shoulder, fell into the dinosaur. So at first he tried climbing onto it, which is why the dinosaur was missing some of its big shields
plates
up on its back, and that didn't work. So he threw those in the grass because they got his fingerprints on them. And then he's like, dang it. So he probably poked a hole and chipped away at it and went to reach in and fell in, and yeah,
it's just a cell phone.
I still think it was the mafia. It was the mafia. The Barcelona.
They were like, how we're gonna do this next one?
The Barcelona mafia. Put him in the Stegosaurus.
Put him in the dinosaur.
You'll be swimming with the dinosaur.
It's so sad.
It is sad. It's depressing. And yeah, I guess that's a note to self to remember that don't get yourself into situations you can't get out of. I don't know.
And it's just a cell phone. Report it lost. If you report it lost, you can file a claim on it.
Get a new one.
Go buy a new one.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah, that's sad.
That's a big statue too.
Are you hearing anything from
Mr. Smith?
Yeah. We're not getting any sound from him or anything else. And I'm excited to hear about
I know.
Eisenhower and the alien. I mean, we've talked about Valiant Thor before. We've touched on it. We haven't gone deep. One day we need to. All right. So Les should be here for this story.
Oh.
Chimpanzee troop beats and kills infant gorillas in unprecedented clash. Now it's sad, I think, mostly because of the infant gorilla part. But chimpanzees are notoriously violent and vile primates, and a
super aggressive.
Yeah. So scientists have witnessed chimpanzees killing gorillas for the first time in 2 shocking attacks caught on video at a national park in Gabon on the west coast of Central Africa. New study finds. We're getting this from Live Science. I'm going to go ahead and share this bad boy on the screen.
It says host can add you to the broadcast and haven't. So maybe try adding him to the broadcast before you jump on that.
He's right there. Now we've got this other one that just does a Forever of Us.
He says he can hear us and see us.
Okay.
But they have invite guest 1. What's that?
That's to send the guest invite.
Okay.
So we've done that.
Hang in there, Paul.
Yeah. Paul, try logging off and jumping back on.
Yeah.
Real quick here. I'll go ahead and kick you off, not violently. Oh, there you go. Man, he definitely can hear us. So anyway, so I'm going to quickly share this on the screen.
Where was this taken?
Africa, I suppose, where chimpanzees are. But
I don't know where chimpanzees live, so it's a question I needed answered.
They live in Africa. Anyways, so researchers from a place university,
Osnabrück.
good job, Betsy, and Max Planck Institute for Evolutionary Anthropology in Germany were following a massive group of 27 chimpanzees. 27 chimpanzees could probably tear through a community. I'm telling you, when they do Planet of the Apes, they aren't kidding. Chimps,
they're brutal.
Yeah, they are brutal.
And they go above and beyond what's necessary.
Paul Blake Smith joined.
Like, we've seen video of them, like, tearing the genitalia out of other chimpanzees that they have killed.
Yeah. Oh, man. Well, and out of, I mean, have you watched them when they hunt those little tiny monkeys?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, don't watch that, people. But anyway, so when they first observed chimps attack a party of 5 western lowland gorillas, and then in parentheses, I guess this may be their genus name, gorilla. Would that be their genus name?
I don't know.
Anyways, 3 adult females, 1 infant, led by a male silverback. The silverback was really throwing some of the chimps in the air, so he was really trying to protect himself and his group. Simone Pica, a cognitive biologist at that place, Betsy said, told Live Science, despite injuring 3 chimpanzees, the silverback was overwhelmed, and the chimps captured the baby gorilla and killed it.
Beat it to death in exact terms.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're ferocious creatures.
It says here, chimpanzees and gorillas normally coexist peacefully where their ranges overlap in the rainforests of Central Africa. They usually avoid one another, but they act probably like elk and deer. You know, they're
feeding
together,
on the same stuff. And
yeah. Chimps, however, aggressively defend their territory against other chimps, and they're known to to kill members of rival chimp groups. Now, from what I understand, chimps, the young bachelors, kind of live on the outskirts of their tribe's area, and they act like roving patrols. And if a different group comes in, they assault them, and so they act like roving patrols, and then the adult males are on the inside and the females. And generally chimps live in kind of a
tribe.
The alphas do the breeding, and the young bachelors live on the outside, maybe getting stronger and honing their violent skills, But I'm telling you, this is, now we've talked about Bigfoot, like the Gigantopithecus tooth that's found, that's like a orangutan. And orangutan aren't super violent, aren't freaky, and any of that other stuff. But if Bigfoot was to have any chimp in him,
violent,
we would know, because there would be towns all across Oregon and Washington that have trees snatched down and people
beaten
stolen
to death
and everything
with them.
else. Yeah. So I'm just thankful that
terrifying.
Yep. All right, I'm going to change the view. Paul, are you there?
It looks like the mute is off, and then on, and then off.
All right.
Can you hear me?
Oh, there you are.
We can.
Yeah, I'm right here. I've been watching and listening the whole time.
All right. Yeah, we've been.
We still can't see you, but now we can hear you.
Well, I look a lot better when you can't see me. So
that's what I say. Why do we need video?
Yeah.
This started as a podcast and then morphed.
I'll send you a picture of Leonardo DiCaprio, and we'll see.
There you go. You can be anyone you want.
Well, until then, what I'm going to do is I'm going to share a screen of your books. I've got your Amazon book list pulled up. Now, I do want to put out a note. People, if you're going to go buy his books, try to do it through your local bookstore. And the reason I say that is because they need your help now. But you've got quite a few there. What do we got? 10 or 11 books?
I've written 6, and I got about 3 or 4 more to go here.
Okay.
Wow.
All right. So I think mostly we'll center around the Eisenhower encounter and kind of circle around him. But when I go through a list of your books, you've got, Eisenhower encounter. You've got MO41. What is MO41?
All right. I'm from Cape Girardeau, Missouri, where we had an aerial crash, evidently. I really believe it, extraterrestrial, in April of 1941. So MO41 just means Missouri 41. It's shorthand. It indicates it's 6 years before Roswell, and we had a crash on a farm just outside of town around the time my grandfather was a judge in Cape Girardeau, and my father was about 6 years old. So I kept waiting and waiting. This is a fascinating subject. When is someone going to write a book? Eventually, I got tired of waiting and wrote my own, and I wrote a sequel, and it's called 3 Presidents, 2 Accidents. Last fall, I issued a re-release of Mo41, The Bombshell Before Roswell, revised with some new information. And that's what I'm doing with my sequel now, working on adding to that. It's a fascinating story. And during all this time, I kept running across this mention of President Eisenhower meeting with actual extraterrestrial beings, of friendly ones, at an airfield in 1954. And again, I kept waiting and waiting. Where is there a book on this? Sounds very exciting. So I decided to stop waiting and write it myself, and it's done quite well. And I recently cinched up a TV deal. We might be seeing that coming to TV in the next year or two.
Awesome. So when you wrote MO41, how did you research that? Where does one start?
Very difficult, because everyone's long since dead.
Yeah,
from 1941. And I tried to talk to some people, and I found out even their children have died. It was 80 years ago. And I found only a couple of witnesses who remember the talk about it. They didn't see it, but they said, oh, yes, I remember the adults said there was a little outer spaceship that crashed. And these little spacemen, they called it. They didn't. And she said, well, we didn't use the term ET or
Sure.
aliens or UFOs. Those weren't in use back then. We just called it little spacemen. And I thought that added to the authenticity of this story, that apparently the call went out from someone who lived on a farm just outside Cape Girardeau. And he saw a fireball and heard this explosion and thought, oh my gosh, an airplane has crashed just short of the airport. There were two in those days. Now there's only one. So in the farm fields, he ran out there and saw for himself and called it into the Cape Fire Department that there's been an airplane crash. He thought for sure in the darkness that's what it was. Well, when people showed up, like a Cape Girardeau minister who was called in for spiritual comfort to possible victims on the ground, they were astonished, and they found only a round silver disc that had broken open and had a debris field in this crop, and it had set the crop on fire. The fire department were trying to put it out, and the police and the sheriff's department were there. The minister said that he saw the rounded ship with the opening, and he took a little peek in there and saw at least one little seat like that you would have for a child by human standards, and some gauges or dials, and a silver band around the interior of what we would call a cockpit. He said there were strange hieroglyphic writings on that silver band, and he couldn't make it out. But the most awesome thing that he saw right up close were three small dead gray alien bodies that two were dead and one was just still barely breathing. And he said his prayers, as he was asked before he arrived.
Oh my gosh.
Say Christian prayers over this poor soul. He had to have been out of his mind thinking, what in the world is this thing? Because, we are quite used to grays and aliens in movies, TV shows, websites.
Yeah.
But they had almost nothing back then. And they had to have been pretty shaken up. So he said, while I was doing so, two local men picked up a dead alien and held it up for a picture. A local newsman pulled out a small brownie camera from his pocket and took this snapshot of a dead alien being held up by these two men. And shortly thereafter, the Army or Air Corps arrived and said, put that shrapnel back down on the ground. You are to leave no evidence behind. You're never to speak of this matter again. It's a matter of national security. We'll take any photos or notes that you took, and they forbid it to be discussed or put in the local newspaper. In my research, I found a newspaper from late April of 1941 with a strange entertainment industry obscure piece of trivia on the very top of the front page where all the hard news goes. April 29th. This would have been probably, in my estimation, around 2 days after the crash. I feel that this was a late substitution in the local paper, that they maybe tried to print the story, but were warned off, and they had to put some silly fluff about an actress who was changing her name. All around the newspaper headlines were about the Nazis attacking England and a terrible accident that had claimed the life of a local man. And hard news always went on the front page of the local Cape Girardeau paper. But in this case, there's this strangely out of place piece of trivia about an actress. And I'm thinking, that might have been their original report that they had to pull due to pressure from the government. So the man who took that alien photograph, according to the minister, showed up 2 weeks after the crash and said, I've got a copy of this photo and I want you to have a copy. So the minister took the photo reluctantly, and his granddaughter said she saw it over 10 years later at family parties. They would bring it out and look at it, and by golly, it was of a dead alien, creepy looking with big black eyes, your typical gray with a huge head, and he was propped up by two local men in a farm field. So it seemed to confirm this story that her grandfather told the family that night, and then he clammed up. He was obeying that demand that everyone keep quiet for reasons of national security. But he did talk about it with his family that very night and never spoke of it again. So it's very interesting. It sounds a fair amount like Roswell, doesn't it?
It does. And that would have to be shocking to be a minister that's
what I was just gonna say.
yeah, kind of built on this spirituality and all that. And then
Your whole paradigm is shattered
yeah,
when you arrive at this scene.
and then you have to rethink
Everything.
Well, you have to you can still maintain your religion. You just maybe have to expand it to, instead of earthly, to kind of universally or cosmetologically. There's a word.
I get it. I totally understand.
Hang on, I gotta write Webster's dictionary.
We got to come up with a new word for freaking out and having to change your mind about things. But when you see the evidence right there, the minister said he did not touch it, which was probably wise. But these two local men did. And I don't know if they ever suffered any repercussions for that health-wise. But this was late April, just before the birth of May 3rd of the grandchild of the minister. And you think, well, who else in Cape Girardeau would know? Well, there was a young flyer. He loved aviation in the community. And he was in college, and he was probably at Mizzou at the time, but he came back later, and he may have told his family about what he heard hanging out with all the pilots at the airport. And his name was Rush Limbaugh Sr. His son
Like
went on
the
to
Rush
become-
Limbaugh?
Yeah, the son became a very famous broadcaster. In 2007, I believe it was, somebody called up Rush Limbaugh Jr.'s show and asked him, Rush, what's up with this UFO crash in your hometown of Cape Girardeau, Missouri? And he said, there's more to this story than you might think. And he went on to the next caller.
He didn't expand? He didn't
Rush usually dismisses, kooky, crazy things on the air, but he did not. And it shows that he probably learned about it from his father, who was a lawyer in town, and his grandfather, very esteemed, highly thought of lawyer, Rush Limbaugh I. So that Rush the broadcaster is actually Rush III. He was my little league umpire when I was a boy growing up in Cape Girardeau, believe it or not.
Rush Limbaugh was your umpire.
That's right. He was a big hulking guy, and I was just a skinny kid, so I didn't argue those balls and strikes, that's for sure. He was an obscure DJ on the radio in those days. It didn't pay much, so he had to augment his income by doing these games in the park as an umpire. And I had no idea, no one did, that he would go on to huge fame and fortune. And he passed away this early February, I believe it was, or a year ago. Yeah, I think this February. I wish he would have left a confession behind or some sort of video statement. Who knows? Maybe something will get released in a year or two, but I think he knew the whole story.
Well, maybe he did leave something behind, and it's still being gone through, and it's all political. And Rush Limbaugh's story is an interesting one, where he was just a music DJ, and then some music came out that he didn't like, and so he kind of protested playing it on the radio station he worked for, and that kind of
launched his career.
Yeah, exploded him into stardom.
Yeah. He had to go to, I think, Pittsburgh and then Kansas City and Sacramento to become famous. He did not become famous in Cape. In fact, he went on the air as a kid under the name Rusty Saw on local AM radio.
Yeah,
Really?
Yeah, and then he just went to Rusty Limbaugh, which was his nickname back then. And he went to, for a semester at Southeast Missouri State University, where I went to college a little later on. So my grandfather knew Rush Limbaugh the first and the second, and so did my dad. My dad went over to the Limbaugh house to get some record albums, he said one day, and Rush's, the famous broadcaster's father was there, and he said, if you think Rush can go on and on, you haven't heard anything. He couldn't hold a candle to his old man. So that tells me that Rush, the apple didn't fall too far from the tree there.
Yeah.
So he went on to great fame and fortune.
We see that in
estates could be settled within years. It might take years to sort out what you want released or what you want you've left behind for the public. You remember Walter Haupt from the Roswell case? He was in the Army. He waited until he died, and he released a video statement, said the whole thing is true. I saw the bodies. and I saw the reports, and they told us to lie and cover it up. I'm hoping something like that will turn up someday from maybe not Rush, but someone else involved in the 1941 Missouri crash.
Mm.
So one of our listeners asked a question that I was just thinking of. So the minister was given this photo. Does his family, or was it passed on in his family? Do they still have possession of it?
Okay, the granddaughter says that she was at a dinner party when she was around 10 or 11, and a neighbor came over and said, well, I'd be very interested in seeing this photo when they mentioned it to him. So he took the photo and said, I know something about photography. I'll just take it home and look it over and show it to a friend of mine who might know what this creature is. And the man moved away about a week later, and they never saw or heard from him again. He took the photo with him.
Oh,
Yeah, so it could be floating around out there somewhere, but it seems unlikely. It appears as though this man, a little research shows he was in military intelligence, and he ended up at an Air Force base in Albuquerque. I think that's like Kirtland. And there have been many rumors of UFOs stashed there at the Manzano storage facility and Los Alamos labs, and, aliens. You see and read a lot of rumors that there are UFO connections there. So whether he took it on purpose to cover it up, or he just wanted a souvenir and just blew town without thinking, I don't know.
Oh.
Yeah, and I think you've got to watch who you trust in situations where the government has an interest in what you know or what you're doing, because we're seeing things come out on the news right now about kind of actions that the government does that is less than forthright.
That's right.
So
when you hear the Cape Girardeau story, you think, well, how could the military come in that night so quickly?
Now, how close to
a base
Leonardwood are you?
In Sykeston, Missouri, there was an aerial training program about 30 miles south, and a key member of that executive part of running that program was the brother of the Cape Girardeau County Sheriff. So all it took was a quick phone call. Yeah, they organized these Army Air Force or Army Air Corps in those days to come on up in Jeeps, and it probably took like an hour's drive, and they hemmed in the site and took off with the goods. They picked it all up and left. A Cape Girardeau fireman said on his deathbed, a man named Walter Reynolds told his family while he was ill with cancer that I was there at the crash site. The story is true. The Army caught me trying to stick some shrapnel, some debris in my pocket for a little souvenir. They yelled at me, chewed me out, and kicked me out of the site. He said afterwards, in the days following, that I felt like I was being watched around town, and I'm sure my phone was tapped. And if you check the records, J. Edgar Hoover was crazy about tapping telephones in those days. And Cape Girardeau did have an FBI agent, had an office in town, and probably was called to the site that night. So it all starts to hold together, the whole claim. My stepmother said she heard the story when she was in high school in the 1960s, long before this broke around the year 2000, and people began to hear bits and pieces from the granddaughter of the minister. And so it's all just really fascinating. And I call it the big bombshell story that should have been. And that's why I have the story labeled Mo 41, the bombshell before Roswell, but it got all covered up.
Do you think that because of the time frame that it happened in, do you think that this led way to like the task force or whatever they created to deal with incidents like this?
I think it could well have. I think Harry Truman became president, former senator of Missouri, in fact, a Grand Master Freemason from the state of Missouri. And he was familiar with the Master Mason president, FDR, and selected to be FDR's running mate of all people. And Truman became president. And after Roswell and the days after, I think that's when he decided we've got to have a committee. Let's put together 12 guys from military and academic world, and let's start investigating this. I think Truman was quite familiar with the Missouri crash by 1947. And he authorized, I don't know if you ever heard of the Twining White Hot report?
No.
I haven't.
That is an investigation of the Roswell crash that was once a secret document, got leaked by General Nathan Twining, head of the Air Force. And in this document, he said, we have decided that the materials taken from the New Mexico desert are authentically extraterrestrial when compared to the Missouri recovery of 1941. It says that in this document. And I tried to put that.
Gosh.
There's a smoking gun. And I put that in my book. And I even tried to get the publishers to copy those parts of this 1947 report that mention a second time the Missouri discovery and this Missouri crash or something that they refer to. So we know from that it is very likely this happened first. Roosevelt wanted it covered up. He didn't want any foreign nation to learn that we might have our really exciting secret weapon that we can use in the war. When the Missouri crash happened, we were about 8 or 9 months before Pearl Harbor. We were still in the war yet.
Well, and also, I mean, regardless of what anyone thinks, Roosevelt wanted that war. There was global political maneuvers going on for a decade before that, kind of aiming for
Conflict.
a large war in Europe to kind of reassess the global powers. And I think an alien crash landing
would have been huge.
Well, it would have probably made the world stop for a minute and think, okay, wait a second, we've got to reassess.
Stop fighting one another. We've now got craft landing on our planet.
Yeah. It would have gave a larger perspective than just northern hemisphere dominance, honestly. But yeah, I think that would have. And on Eisenhower, I mean, anyone who's drifted near UFOs and aliens has heard about Valiant Thor. And that's about Eisenhower. But is your story surrounding that, or is there something different? Is Valiant?
So did the MO-41 lead you to Eisenhower's encounter?
Only somewhat, in that I kept running into this over the years, and I really wanted more on this. I'll stop and interject one important fact that you read or heard of the day after Roswell by Colonel Corso.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Yeah. He says that the recoveries from Roswell, and I think another crash or two, they determined these little gray aliens were what they called biorobots. They were like created identical, like they were punched out of a mold in a factory or something. And they were sort of alive creatures and yet automated or programmed to do the dirty work of more intelligent creatures, possibly even human-like ones from another world. Well, that's precisely what landed at Edwards Air Force Base in February of 1954, 1 year into Eisenhower's administration, and he was golfing nearby in Palm Springs and went out bravely to the airport to meet these, well, it wasn't an airport, it was an airfield, a military secure base out in the middle of desert, in the middle of nowhere, really, Edwards Air Force Base. And he met these landed human-like extraterrestrials, and they spoke English and made it clear they're monitoring us. They're watching us. They were almost like our cousins. There were only a few differences between humans and these human-like aliens that landed. Some of the account comes from an eyewitness who did speak up in the early 80s. He said, I've learned that everyone at the encounter has died, and I don't want this story to die out. So he described how Eisenhower kept himself surrounded by 6 security guards and the test pilot who was there at the base, Air Force test pilot, who remained anonymous, but he wanted this story out, and said that the aliens were friendly and apparently offered Eisenhower an energy program if we would just stop our nuclear weapons and proliferating the planet with atomic bombs and setting them off in dangerous test programs. And Eisenhower turned them down, said, no, thanks. I'm not going to disarm unilaterally and have the other nations of the world continue to build up and put us at a disadvantage. So the extraterrestrials were said to have been about 5 feet at most and barely had a little maybe fuzz on their hair. I imagine there are a few differences like larger nostrils and larger chests for being for holding larger lungs for breathing the atmosphere on their own home planet. But otherwise, they were somewhat like our relatives, and this was almost like a family reunion, you might put it. And Eisenhower was very impressed with the aliens, but said, "You're so advanced, we can't have this. You're going to have to leave. It would start a panic if you started flying around and landing and showing yourself to others. Please do not do this."
So the aliens that landed at Cape Girardeau, did they succumb to their injuries, or is it the atmosphere on the planet that they believe?
That's a very good point. The minister said, "I looked at these alien creatures and I could not see any visible injuries, no marks at all. And yet they were dead. One was having trouble breathing and died right in front of him. And I think that hits upon the cause of death. They were unable to breathe our oxygen-rich atmosphere." FDR had an Army chief of staff, the very famous George C. Marshall. A scientist said in the 50s, I talked to Marshall, and I said, "What's up with these UFOs?" And Marshall said, in all candor, "We've had 3 crash landings, and in all cases, the extraterrestrials were not able to breathe our atmosphere, and they burned up or incinerated from inside their organs, like their lungs. They couldn't handle our air. So once they were ejected from the craft, they probably died trying to breathe our atmosphere that was so different from their own and that from which was inside their spaceship." So that kind of makes more sense. The extraterrestrials who met with Eisenhower may well have been the creators of these gray aliens who created these creatures to do their dirty work and scout around and pick up samples of plants and animals, maybe abduct cows. I don't know. Cape Girardeau had a large dairy community out in the countryside. So I hope these aliens were not up to a little cattle abduction or mutilation, but no proof of that.
Yeah, and probing. We got to leave the probe. Well, and also if they're creating, say, biological androids,
right?
Oh, that's creepy.
There's no reason why they couldn't even just adjust that creation to be able to survive on Earth, which brings forward future scary thoughts. But they could have also the ambassadors could have been biological androids that were programmed a little deeper and had the ability to breathe whatever different atmosphere was needed.
Because
you make a very good point.
The ones that met with Eisenhower in the reports, I mean, obviously didn't have this same issue.
Right. They were more human-like and able, apparently, to breathe our atmosphere without any oxygen tank or a mask over their faces. They were already obviously familiar with our planet and had no problems walking around. They made sure not to be armed. They even invited Eisenhower and his men to step aboard their ship and inspect them at your will, anything you want. They were apparently very friendly and open, and at one point put on an aerial display for the president. According to the test pilot, the aliens got in their craft and put on a little air show. And when they landed, they got out and they put on a second show that really troubled the president. And he was very worried. And at that point, he asked them not to show themselves. Would you like to hear what they did?
Yeah.
According to the test pilot, the aliens then made themselves seem to be invisible. They cloaked themselves.
Oh.
They disappeared from sight and then came back a few seconds later, apparently moved around. And Eisenhower's like, "Oh, my God, we can't have this." He says, "You can't be here and teaching this to others. It would be a disaster."
Yeah,
so
can you imagine? Can you imagine being in Eisenhower's position? Of course you would say that.
Yeah. He had to do what's best for protecting America. He thought, what if we have a panic like the War of the Worlds broadcast back in 1937, when just the idea by a few people set off a bit of a mild panic from a radio play that aliens were invading in the War of the Worlds. So he didn't want that on a massive scale should this story get out. And
And
another factor was that we had a way of life that was dependent upon the stock market and major corporations. And you tell them that, oh, we're outdating all our energy and all our aircraft, and we're going to go with this alien stuff. Then the stock market would crash. People would go out of work. Eisenhower remembered the great crash of 29, and he didn't want that to happen on his watch. So he was a very conservative religious man. And he said, we're going to have to come to an agreement. And apparently he did sign a kind of treaty asking them to stay away. And it may well still be observed to this point today, where you might see UFOs flitting about as we do in videos and such, but they're not landing and they're not presenting themselves. I think they're all going along with what Eisenhower asked them to do.
Another scary thought is that might be a different batch of aliens
Oh
with
my
different
gosh.
objectives.
Yeah, I've thought of that too. There could be hundreds of different ones with different goals of coming here, watching us, or plotting something rotten. They haven't done anything too rotten, maybe a few abductions, but they almost always put us back.
And Eisenhower, let's just to be fair to the story, was a professional at hiding things.
No, he's a professional soldier, and
Right.
I mean, he was the commander of the one would say the largest and most impactful engagement to happen in probably 200 years.
That's right. Young people today don't understand how huge he became. He almost personally directed the war effort in Europe, brought the Allied powers to victory, came home with ticker tape parades. He was mobbed wherever he went. When he was just trying to be an Army chief of staff for Truman, people begged him to run for president. He finally did, and he won in a landslide and was reelected in a landslide. He was enormously popular. So he would be the man you would go to, wouldn't you, if you were an extraterrestrial wanting to speak to the man in charge on this planet?
Sure.
Yeah, he would be. And then that brings me back to what kind of world could we be living in had he said,
Wow. Let's get this out.
Let's make a deal.
Yeah.
Oh,
Crazy.
We
All
could have
kinds
been-
of aliens. You would be opening a Pandora's box by saying, well, we'll let you in. And then other aliens would think, well, they're in. How about us?
Well, not just that, but I mean, had we
it would change the face of war games, and I'm sure he
Well,
was looking at it
what
from
if
that point of
what
view.
if it could have been the end of war, the end of any nation states going to war against nation states, the end of, I mean, you look at it, you've got people who want to see some kind of socialism and undo capitalism, and I'm a pure capitalist, but if you do away with if you go to a post-scarcity world, which may have been something they offered, and even if it's post-scarcity in energy, what kind of value would that offer the world, or would it be catastrophic? And that's a big question to wrestle with.
We can dream up all kinds of scenarios. What would have happened? I'd hate to see humanity, the darker side, take advantage of other people with things that they have learned from extraterrestrials. Some of them maybe not so friendly, different alignments, different
Sure.
crazy kind of stuff, chaos on this planet. So things have been relatively under control. Are you familiar with the what's called ultra top secret document leaked in 2017 to Heather Wade? Was a 1989 Defense Intelligence Agency document that talked about Eisenhower did indeed form a treaty with extraterrestrials.
Yeah.
And it said it's been adhered to by every president since. I got to believe they all know it, and they won't give you a straight answer when you ask them on a TV show, like Obama and Bush and Clinton, and even President Trump was asked about it. And he said, oh, that's a very interesting subject. We're going to have to look at that.
See, I wonder if the presidents are let in on the bag.
They have to be.
Well, I don't think so.
I think at least a little.
Because Clinton had that, what was that AG friend of his?
John Podesta?
No, the other guy that came from Arkansas with him.
Hubble?
Might have been Hubble. But anyways, He brought him in and made him an AG, had passed him through the Congress, everything else, and gave him one job. Well, two jobs. Find out about aliens and find out who killed JFK. That's the only thing he done with him. And so I don't think I think we think the president is a powerful person. I don't think they are. And I think Trump's time showed us that. Definitely Biden's time is showing us that. I think the president is
the front man.
He's the face on the dollar bill. The dollar bill has value. The face on it means nothing.
If you were military intelligence and you knew a president is just passing through, 4 years or 8 years, they're going to be gone, would you really share too much with him?
Yeah.
No, I've heard they call that some of the military intelligence and some of the bureaucrats, the true government, the government that is eternal, call them they call them trespassers and temporary.
I guess that's one way of looking at it. Sure.
Because does our government truly change? I mean, the president will come in and do a bunch of fluff and maybe change some things that definitely can and do have economic impacts, but the process that runs the government that is eternal never changes.
Well, I think Vice President Nixon in 1954, when Eisenhower met with these aliens, did not have a clue. But as he gained more experience and power, Linda Moulton Howe is a source that says Nixon was clued in at a couple of meetings regarding extraterrestrials, sitting alongside Eisenhower, and learned about them late in his second term. And he wanted to run. Nixon wanted to run for president in 1960, and he accomplished his goal in 1968. And I'm researching the Nixon-Jackie Gleason encounter, which happened February 19th, 1973, exactly 19 years after the Eisenhower, same exact date, where Eisenhower may have formed a treaty. And it's, you theorize that treaty need to be updated. And that's why Nixon went to that Air Force base in 73, that he knew all about it too.
Now, what date was this?
February 19th.
You're right. February 19th, 1954 for Eisenhower, February 19th, 1973 for Nixon and Gleason at Homestead Air Force Base on the East Coast.
What if February has a particular time when maybe
wormholes are open or
their planet's close enough to make it here because they're trying to save fuel also? I mean, on a galactic scale, a cycle around the sun isn't that big of a difference, but maybe they're penny pinchers and very frugal. Maybe
interesting.
Maybe it's a date as to when certain species come.
And we honestly do the same thing. It's not that much of a stretch to imagine another race, species, whatever, what have you, watching and not interfering. We just covered that chimpanzee attack.
Yeah.
I mean, we are an interesting but pretty violent species.
Yeah, we are. I would say the only thing worse than chimps are us.
So
if there was an agreement formed, sometimes when you're at work, you sign up for another year. A ball player signs up for another year. You take it year to year in intervals, so that if Eisenhower set this agreement as of February 1954, and Nixon knew about it and wanted to go, and maybe he even had his own encounter. Supposedly, Jackie Gleason's wife said Jackie came home that night and said that he had just seen the bodies of 4 dead aliens at Homestead, that Nixon personally showed it to him. Well, records show Nixon and Gleason were hobnobbing that afternoon at a golf tournament Jackie was running in South Florida, and it would have been just a short trip down to Homestead. And for Nixon, he may have had to go there anyway to update this agreement. So it all hangs together, and it's going to be part of my next book, the sequel to the Eisenhower encounter, the Nixon-Gleason encounter, and I hope to get that out within the next year.
Yeah.
Wow.
Now let's go through a couple of your other books. Just real quick, Because we do have
you say
some-
you've got 6, but there's a couple other on here. There may be another Paul Blake Smith.
No,
Why that imposter? I'm the only one, I tell you.
no, I think they're all there. I think you've got a couple of reprints and updates.
Oh, okay, okay.
One of them looks like it's the French version of my
Yeah.
book.
Yeah, I was looking at that French.
You see JFK and the Willard Hotel plot. I looked into the Kennedy assassination.
Yeah, let's go into the JFK.
Yeah. I put together a lot of clues that indicate Oswald was probably part of a group that did shoot at the president, and he was the patsy they threw over. But originally, Oswald was seen, according to a report that got leaked, by a man associated with the government outside a hotel, the Willard Hotel in Washington, D.C., just 3 days before an open car motorcade went right by the hotel. So I put together all the clues, and I'm convinced Oswald traveled there along with his compatriots, planning to shoot the president from that hotel or nearby, about a block and a half from the White House. But that fell through. There was a big crowd and lots of TV cameras. So they had to move the site, and I think they set it up in Dallas and pulled it off, and Oswald was the dope that they threw over, because if the president gets shot, somebody's got to go to jail.
Oh,
Yep.
yeah. And it's kind of crazy, because the story behind JFK is, if it wasn't a plot, holy cow, do you get any luckier in life that they have a travel change, they decide to drive him in an open top car. It's set up that the open top car, moves real slow through congested area.
Right.
Just everything falls together for that.
Dallas was known to be kind of a dangerous city for politicians. That Ed Lake Stevenson had been whacked over the head by a mob not long before. So you would think they're going to surround JFK with all the security. You could probably barely get close to him. Instead, it was just the opposite. They seem to have scaled back or cut back his security and left him almost wide open to get shot. And that indicates a domestic plot.
Yeah, it feels like there was something there. It does. And hopefully one day the truth will come out.
Yeah.
You're seen as a crazy person if you just don't blatantly believe that one
whatever
guy
the narrative is
acted by himself. Luckily, this guy who's supposedly a communist sympathizer just ends up working in a building where the car's going to have to round a bend right before that building. Of course, the shot takes place in kind of an awkward area, but it's still a doable shot. But it all comes together almost too clean.
That's right. The car didn't really need to take that slow turn that really slowed it down. Why didn't Oswald open fire when it first started approaching his building? A much better shot.
Yep.
But as it got close to the picket fence in this dark, shady area and the overpass, then the shots rang out, and so many people said there were multiple shots, more than the Oswald rifle, if that was indeed him firing it. He could have been an innocent patsy, but he might have also been part of it. And
I think he had to.
That they got rid of. They sent in the mobster Ruby, who stalked him. I think that's pretty clear, to knock off Oswald before he could talk, and the whole thing got done. And we're still trying to sort it out.
And then Jack Ruby dies of weird cancer in jail soon after. I think it was within like 4 years. It's all of it. All of it just seems. And I mean, look at Oswald's life before that. He's a Marine, has kind of listed as his job in the Marine Corps is kind of a, he's just a, blatant worker bee Marine, nothing special, but we don't have any records of where he was. And then ups and goes to Cuba and then to Russia, brings back a Russian bride. It's like they were building a story for something. That's just my opinion. I may be wrong. Now,
you could be correct. Something very strange is when he defects and denounces the United States and then just comes right back and nobody slaps him in jail. Give me a break.
Yeah, or maybe him defecting is all a part of it, and then his punishment is to become a CI an informant or whatever for whatever alphabet agency. I mean, we're looking at what happened with the Whitmer case. They've got 18 people involved in the Whitmer kidnapping case, and 12 of them are FBI CIs. What is that meeting like? And the FBI,
there's a little more going on below the surface that we're being lied
it's
to.
almost like it's a political setup. But that I do want to get into that one time. But right now I want to talk about sexy alien races.
It's an enticing title, but I think you may be disappointed
Oh.
that the aliens are not sexy. It's a fictional story, but with real life alien information in it, about a young man who falls for a beautiful woman in Las Vegas, and she and her father run a minor league baseball team there. You know how in Milwaukee they have the sausage races? These costume figures run around the field and have a race on the seventh inning. Well, the woman's obsessed with aliens, so they have to go around collecting information on real aliens and create costumes and run them around the ballpark. And to get more crowd attendance at their ball game, they kind of sexy them up and make them outlandish and over the top. And in my fictional storyline, it becomes more popular. But I put in the story of a 1962 crash outside Las Vegas of a UFO that few people know about during JFK's time. And I meshed that into the storyline. And I think readers would appreciate the real life information along with the humor. It was my attempt at a comic novel or a humorous fictional story along with nonfiction information. So at one point, I had a producer, who was interested in turning that into a movie, but that kind of fell through. So I'm hoping someday someone will take note.
Yeah, definitely. So I thought you were going to go into sexy alien races, like the Mars lady on Total Recall. But
oh yes, with the three. Well, never mind. Yeah. No, the aliens themselves. There's nothing sexy. The title's a little misleading, but it does get into this UFO that was seen and reported in the newspapers. This strange light in the sky that started across like 10 or 12 states in the United States, from East Coast to around, I think, Utah, where folks in a small town saw it land. The power went out for a while, so they all started prowling around. What's caused our power outage? And they saw this spaceship lift up, take off, and it sputtered to a halt. It crashed in the desert outside of Las Vegas. A friend of mine was in college in the early 1980s and started researching this story. He lived in Las Vegas, wanted to know all the facts, and he got a very mysterious phone call telling him, "You're not going to look into this. You're going to drop this right now if you know what's good for you." And it scared the bejeebers out of him, and he did indeed drop the story. So I'm sure they would say such a thing if it was fictional and really wasn't alien, wouldn't they? Ha ha.
So that brings me to my next thought. Do you ever worry when you write these books that maybe they're going to start watching you?
It's possible I'm being monitored or my phone tapped. I do hear a strange click, but I'm a nobody. I have no great connections. And
you say that now, but there's men in black that just moved in down the street from you. And
I make sure to emphasize the truth. I've never seen a UFO or an ET. I've had a very boring life. I'm a little jealous of everyone who has. I have no actual close encounter of my own.
Oh.
Yeah, I'm the same way. But the FBI or the men in black that moved down the street from me, I deliver them brownies on Thursdays. I'm going to win them over myself. Are you okay if we run through some listener questions and thoughts real quick?
Surely. Go right ahead.
All right. Okay, so some of the stories are about the news we covered. Like Kendra talked about the guy who went down to Baja, and it's a super sad story, but we talked about it because it has a tie into QAnon, which is kind of
an Illuminati.
and Illuminati and all that, which is kind of an overreaching thing. I think the guy's just trying to get out of it, but I don't know the guy.
We answered that one and the one below.
Yep.
James comments, supposedly the Germans recovered a crashed UFO in 1936.
Yeah, wasn't that called the
wasn't there like a video on YouTube like Skinny something?
I know we talked about it when we did
Skinny
Operation.
Bob.
Okay,
Yeah.
Skinny Bob was from a 1942, supposedly, Russian KGB file that got hacked about 10 years ago and ended up on the internet. And that is one creepy looking live alien. I think it's real. And he matches the Cape Girardeau UFO description, the alien description, almost to a T. With the big black eyes and the tiny little dot, the huge bulging forehead. His eye even seems to sort of half blink in that video. It's amazing. Somebody wrote in, I work with CGI every day, and this is not CGI. He wanted to attest to that, I think, on YouTube. So that's something for folks to look at and take seriously. Is Skinny Bob from Russian Contact? It's not just that they saw an alien, but they look like they have him indoors and they're chatting with this creature.
Mm.
And
I watched it a long time ago.
Yeah,
I think I did too. A very long. This would have been 7 years ago or so.
yeah.
Yeah, I think when it first hit, people were talking about it.
That's
Back in the 30s, apparently there's talk that the Germans really did have their own UFO crash in a forest, and that around the same time, or maybe a few years earlier, in Italy, during Mussolini's reign, they also found a crashed disc, and the Pope was notified at that time. So those are kind of sketchy rumors. I don't know of any specific books that really pinpoint those stories. They're quite fascinating, but it may be that they had this material before we did from Cape Girardeau 1941, and maybe Roosevelt knew it and wanted to catch up.
Yeah. Well, they think that the theory is, I think I read it in a book called Operation High Jump, which was it was a fiction, but it tied in a lot of historical stuff, and it talked about that crash in 36 in the Bavarian Black Forest, and they believe that that's where some of the technology, or they postulated that some of the technology that Germans had that were quite a bit more advanced than everyone else's was from that crash, that they picked that apart. And then obviously we took possession of a lot of that during Paperclip.
That's interesting, and it might well be true. And it starts to wind back to the immediate response by the military and the FBI to the Cape Girardeau crash in late April of 1941, where they swore everyone to silence.
Mm-hmm.
Cape Girardeau had a large German population, especially in farm country.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, most of those were loyal to America, but then there were a small minority called Bundists who were pro-Nazi and sending information back. So it makes more sense why you would hush everyone quickly, so that not pro-Nazi forces would not send this information back, that we would have a secret weapon during the wartime era of the 1940s. I wish Cape Girardeau had more people willing to talk, or an old diary that will turn up, or someone's written confession. There might be a treasure on Earth someday. But do you think there still could be government agents who would sniff that out and still steal it or take it away to this day? Probably, don't you think?
Probably, yeah, probably just as much as ever, honestly.
Yeah, like the guy who bought some of the storage things from Tesla. He actually bought a storage unit, and there was a box
From Nikola Tesla, not the car.
No, Nikola Tesla. There was a box of just drawings, all these mad kind of drawings in this box. He went on record as saying that about the time he realized what he had, they'd knocked on his door and taken it away from him.
I've not heard that before, but I believe it. Do you know what year that was?
Gosh, I'd have to look back at my notes. We did a show on Nikola Tesla.
So it was like recently, in the last 10 years, maybe?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. He bought a storage unit, and he said he didn't know what he had, but he listed them in a yard sale page as like antiquities. And somebody reached out to him and said, do you know what this is? And he was like, no, not really. It was an old box of stuff. And the next day there was a knock at the door, and he said 2 men in suits told him, hand it over. We're not asking. And they took it and they left.
And then it's gone.
Well, you saw the Pentagon report in which they grudgingly, vaguely said, we can't explain this. Golly, what's going on? If you saw the 60 Minutes report, they talked to military personnel, and they talked a little more expressly of, we're seeing technology that's way over our heads. And one woman, I think it was, one of the military representatives said, our pilots see these and report them every single day. Now, that's pretty astonishing. And they said this on the air, and the stuff that flits around way faster, goes down into the ocean, then comes back out and zips around, or has no propellers or propulsion devices, a tic-tac. And the government's grudgingly allowing us to know and to talk about these things to a degree. So things are slowly loosening up.
Yeah.
I think a big part of that is society. I think a big part of that is like this podcast. We're just she's intelligent. I'm a knucklehead, and we're able to broadcast ourselves. So we're normalizing
talking about this
communication
stuff.
about the weird stuff, which then allows military members or people who've seen it gives them a little bit more liberty to talk about what they've saw. So we've seen more and more bleed out. I still think that whole CIA Pentagon release, I think they didn't release anything. I figured they were going to do like they've always done and say, yeah, we know nothing. We've a stack of books on the crap behind them. We don't know nothing. Oh, those, don't worry about those. Like MK Ultra. Please don't go looking in our financial records office on anything, but we burned everything else. No, I
was sorely disappointed because it was like something weird is happening. Thank you for coming to our TED Talk.
Yeah.
And that was it.
Yeah, we're disappointed, but we're not surprised, are we?
Yeah.
All right. James says, what might be explanation from so many of the aliens looking so humanoid are that they are related to us? Yeah, and you covered that. They are like cousins to us.
Well, we talked about panspermia at one point, and
the catapult on Venus.
I don't think it's a catapult.
That they just fling biological stuff out across the universe, and wherever it takes. We've talked about it. We know how it works. Little gray guys catapult. One guy says pull, another little guy pulls a lever, and then boom, and then it's a goo. They just fling it out. We get it.
We've talked about panspermia. What if the universe was all seeded at once, and dependent on where that particular biological matter landed determines the evolution or the pathway.
How far away you are physically in the universe might determine how different you look or act. I mean, there might be.
Well, yeah.
Except for the octopus. We recognize the octopus. The octopies were fling from somewhere else because they are alien.
Yes, 100%.
What if advanced aliens are taking our DNA and recreating a human-like race? And
we do that.
Not looking like us. Yeah.
We do that. We clone things, create things.
Yeah. Here's another thing. It just came out in Yahoo, a week and a half ago, that Penn State or Pitt State, whatever, some college. It's a sad story, but they are taking fetuses that were aborted and putting them on mice and trying to grow stuff. They're growing hair, they're growing organs, humana. That's like our step towards us making these biological androids that the aliens
we are becoming aliens
are sending out here. So it follows a path. I mean, how long until they are making, right now they're making parts, but until they're making a biological humanoid being that you can set to task.
It used to be the stuff of science fiction stories and movies, but you see and hear some weird things. Remember that photo of a mouse with an ear growing on its back?
No, yep.
And that's probably just the tip of the iceberg.
Now, what if we are just like several
Just a couple hundred years behind them.
several hundred years behind them? What if literally we are a repeat of their history? Like maybe they first started meddling in atomic bombs and nuclear fission, and so they see that we're doing it, so they try to intervene and create peace, and like, oh yeah, well, they're never going to stop, and
They're going to have to, we may have to go through the same thing they did. And what if, like, we come up against the Great Filter and they're trying to guide us to avoiding that? But I mean, next thing you know, I mean, they're like, they've got to, maybe that is a test on whether we can reach that intergalactic level, is the Great Filter. Now, I would argue the Great Filter nowadays is on the biological and not the nuclear level.
yeah.
But what if we're just coming up against that and have to figure our way through it to be accepted into that intergalactic community?
Well, these
Whoa.
are all really good points, and people watching your show have their minds blown right now. You've given them a lot to think about.
I don't know. Well, the people watching our show are all
They think
smarter
just
than
like
I
us.
am. James says Leslie K. Wilkins Hillerman.
Hillerman.
I don't know who that is. He might have been. The way it shows up in here, we can't tell if this was a sharing thing.
If we had allowed the aliens to be seen, we'd be struggling with alien equality right now.
Or
Laura
human,
says.
or human equality. Oh, the aliens would be considered the sexiest, and then people would quit breed. Yeah, it could really go awry.
Yes.
Then there is the crash in Aurora, Texas, in 1897.
I don't know much about that one.
That one's kind of sketchy, but there's two factors I consider. One is the co-author of The Day After Roswell, Bill Burns, looked into it, and so did Kevin Randall, two UFO experts, and they write books, and they want cases, real life cases, to talk about and trumpet to the skies, and they both looked into Aurora, Texas, and said this was not an alien event. This was most likely a metal-clad experimental balloon that someplace like Fort Hood or Fort Worth was experimenting with, and it just landed, and that's that.
Have you ever heard of the bat tests the U.S. did during World War II?
The what test?
Bat test.
No, I'm interested in hearing the explanations about
You,
bats, or
Sonic
is it the
Kitty about put me over the edge. I don't know if I'm ready.
Sonic Kitty, they did tests with cats. They thought they could put bombs onto the naval ships with cats, but the bat test. All right, we're in Texas. Japan is built mostly out of wood. They're thinking we're going to send incendiary bombs into Japan on bats. So let's get bats and figure out how to put little bombs on them or little firecrackers, whatever. And we're going to fly them over, but we've got to kind of drop the temperature so the bat goes into a semi-hibernated state while we do it. And, well, that's where the trouble goes awry. First time we don't freeze them enough, they start on fire as soon as they leave the aircraft, and humming it. Something with the bats waking up. So the next time they freeze them too much. So the bats are in these cages. They release the cages. The doors open. The bats fly out, and there's like a timer. Once the bats start flying, there's a time when the grenades go off. Well, the first time they started flying in the plane, and so they had to kind of kick them out because they were on fire. Second time, they froze them too much. Cages fall to the ground, bat goo, and fireworks everywhere. Next
Remember
time,
the Austin Powers movies where he complains, all I wanted, Dr. Evil says, all I wanted were sharks with freaking laser beams to their backs. Was that too much to ask?
The U.S. did this. So they're in Texas, right? They're doing the testing wherever in Texas.
Yeah.
The next time they do it pretty good, but the bats immediately search for a roost, lots of people's barns around that Air Force Base.
So
Well,
it's not funny.
And these are true stories. Sonic
Yeah.
Kitty.
This is why aliens don't want to have real contact
I'm
with
telling
us.
you, Gleep Glorp right now is pinching the bridge of his nose, shaking his head.
you've got to give them points for creativity and not common sense, but they tried different things.
Yeah. So they're using these bats. The bats are from Texas because they're a larger bat that can carry more firework on their little feet. I don't know. But they truly did this. And you're just like, who's the mad scientist? I mean, there is a guy. He woke up that morning, ate his Wheaties, drank his coffee, and in his mind is running
bat scenario.
what's the best way to glue a bomb to a bat?
Truth is stranger than fiction.
So James also says, I think that UFO in 1962 also was seen in Eureka, Utah. We are located in Utah.
Right.
Eureka is about an hour and a half south of us. I've been there many times.
Yeah.
We're going to definitely dig into that.
Well, then you can buy 100 copies of my book, Sexy Alien Races, to learn more.
Sexy alien races. I like it. And everyone, if you go out and buy his books, but do it through a local bookstore. Let's support our friendly author, and let's also support your local business.
Sounds good.
Yeah. Laura says it makes you wonder what sort of treaties other countries have made with aliens.
That's the scariest
There
part.
it is. Eisenhower's making a treaty. At the same time, across the pond, Khrushchev's making a treaty. Well, actually, I think Khrushchev wasn't in charge yet. It would have been Stalin. So, the aliens held back. They were scared of that stash. They held back. Khrushchev comes in. They land, make a treaty. Mao Zedong, I don't know. They probably made a treaty with him too.
Well, we laugh, but the aliens wanted a treaty with Eisenhower, and he wouldn't disarm unilaterally. So that would have forced the aliens to do landings in other powerful nations like England and Russia and China. So who knows what happened then?
What if when Reagan started that disarmament around the world in the U.S., he didn't start it universally, but he was the president of the U.S. when it started. And
what if they met with him?
What if that's when the aliens finally got the deal brokered with all of the major nuclear powers? And then they said, okay, now we'll come together. We will slowly disarm a little bit. There's a little bit of arguing, glad handing back and forth and deal making. Yes, the U.S. will maintain more, but, population size dictates they can. And, China, you've already killed enough of your own people, so you're going to keep your numbers low because, you're shady. What if it went like that?
It's just mind-boggling what could be going on and what could be revealed in the years to come. I do know that Ronald Reagan, as a candidate for president, went to Cape Girardeau, and the airport not far from where the crash site was. He went back to Cape Girardeau as president. Like a year later, he gave this speech before the United Nations and started talking about what if we were facing an alien threat. And he said that 2 or 3 times. Yeah. And I don't know what he knew, but I suspect Reagan may have known.
He knew something.
Yeah. And it's even eerie. Robert F. Kennedy ran for president and came to Cape Girardeau in the summer of '68. Just a few weeks before he was murdered. And the first words out of his mouth were, "I've always wanted to come to Cape Girardeau." And I'm thinking, why? Unless you knew that Cape Girardeau UFO crash story, why would you say such a thing?
What's interesting to me is they should rename conspiracy theories as spoiler alerts.
Yeah.
Because whatever we're talking about today,
6 month early news story.
Yeah.
It is crazy. And honestly, this is a note for governments. Governments, quit hiding stuff because it comes out and we don't trust you already. We just trust you less. So just, let the cat out of the bag. Let's all just meet up, kumbaya,
Oh, can you
friendly.
imagine?
Well, if they were to start releasing some things and trusting us instead of treating us like children, they might want to start with April of 41, so long ago that all their intelligence sources are dead, all
Yep.
the military and government people are dead,
Nobody would
eyewitnesses
be,
are dead.
nobody would be sworn.
There's
And
no
one
one
would
to
be
catch.
too shocked.
Yeah, there's no one to catch blame or vitriol. They can release and say, hey, look, so there I was in the attic and I wiped the dust off this box. You know the box I'm talking about, the one with the white sticker on the side says 1941. And look what's in it. We found this. Here you go, world. You can even find your most trusted news source that you want to bolster. Don Lemon, we like you. Here you go. You get to release this and talk about what we know. And you don't have to speculate, and you don't even have to say we know it's aliens. You can just read the story that we found in the attic of, the DOD.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like I say, if they don't want to uncover methods and sources today, start with 41 Cape Girardeau and then go to 47 Roswell and then maybe work your way up to 54 Eisenhower. And, everyone's gone. So people, I think, are much more braced up for this from the mainstream
100%.
movies, TV shows and documentaries that, Ancient Aliens is having a real impact in opening people's minds, whether you agree with everything there or not. People are more open to this, and I don't think they're going to be very shocked once files do get open someday or leaked. If somebody knows how to hack into the government's files, go right ahead.
Yeah.
Yeah, no. We're in a very different position today than we were in 41. In 41, it would have absolutely changed the face of the world. Today, it'd be like, yeah, we've known. Like, there's alien sightings all over the place.
Yeah.
Thanks for making it apparent.
Yeah, I'm telling you, it's all about the internet. It's all about right now. We are sitting through the year after the Gutenberg press was invented and the 30 Years War started. We're sitting through a time when the average person had the ability. Then it was the ability to receive, to read the Bible. Because prior to that, you couldn't read the Bible. It was written in Latin. You're in Germany. The languages don't even cross over. So you had to go to a priest. Now it's the person's ability to interact directly with his God. Right now we're sitting in that time. Now, warning alert at the end of this story. But right now we're sitting at that time. It's the average person's ability to get their thoughts out onto the internet. There was another time when the telegraph was invented, when the ability to send a message almost immediately across the continent and across waters, oceans happened. At the end of all these times, when this ability comes out, there's a civil war.
Yep.
I'm just throwing that out there.
There we have it.
Historically, Gutenberg press kicked off the 30 Years War. Telegraph, well, we have a big kind of civil war then that everyone might have heard of. And I'm wondering, this civil war will probably be a different war. It would be more fought on computers, against computers and knowledge. But I think we're sitting in the middle of it right now.
I agree.
And that's a pretty good way to sum things up, don't you?
Yeah. But anyways,
thanks for joining us today.
Thank you so much. I'm going to definitely check out your books. I'm going to read Sexy Alien. I wish I wouldn't have asked now, though, because I wish I could have come on here next time and been like, you lied to me. I bought Sexy Alien thinking that it was going to be like, oh, and this alien was gyrating. And it was about people. This
right.
But anyways,
you would have been sorely disappointed, but amused and entertained by the storyline, I'm sure.
I'm excited to read it. I'm definitely excited to read about the JFK. I mean, what if all these things end up tying in together when we do finally get that,
disclosure,
that Armageddon moment where everything is revealed, and it's all tied together, the aliens and everything. That'd be wild to learn that.
Government disclosure is one thing, but what if somebody did hack into files and, leak it, open it up illegally and anonymously, and like the government didn't want this open? That's another factor to take in.
Well, someone did.
Yeah.
They're sitting in jail right now.
Yeah. They're sacrificing their freedom, if not their lives. But let's hope somebody really reveals something shocking. That would be fun.
Yeah, one true hero was intelligent and ran to Hong Kong and then Russia. The other one, he stayed within their reach, and then they trumped up stuff and extradited him. And yeah, no.
You're talking Snowden and Assange?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, but they did. They released it. They hacked in and released it. Granted, they didn't hack in deep enough, and most of it they didn't hack. They were handed stuff and just published it. Or one of them was the hander, and the other one was the publisher. But, but yeah, if someone was able to hack in and do it, and I think right now we're looking at warfare. I mean, there's stories coming out all the time if you read around. On China is hacking us. Not just business-wise, but as much government-wise as they can on the daily.
Yeah.
All the time. And I'm sure we're doing the same.
Sure.
And I know the big stories come out, Russia hacked us and whatever, but daily China is hacking us. And they're doing it through, I mean, there's a story just came out that they're hacking Israel to get information from them at the same time using Israel as a backdoor to hack us, so it hides who's hacking us.
Yeah.
So it's this is the new warfare. So, you know,
maybe something will come out.
Maybe it's a better style of warfare. Maybe less blood and gore is better warfare. I don't know, but all that remains to be seen.
Thanks for joining us today, Paul. And thanks for listening, everyone.
Yeah.
Yes.
I appreciate it.
Thank you, Paul. We want to have you back on anytime.
Let us know when your new book comes out. We'd like to check it out.
If you find any more information, or for the love of all that is holy, that picture.
Yes,
if that great if someone sent that to me in the mail.
Wouldn't that be cool?
That would be fantastic.
Just leak it online, somebody. Well, it would probably immediately the skeptics would come out and say it's fake. And there are such things as Photoshop that kind of gum up the works. Sometimes you see videos that are fraudulent, but other times there's so many people with their cell phones out capturing UFO footage that it's forcing the government's hand to reveal, you know, at least a little grudging, reluctant confessions that, well, we don't know what this is. Yeah, you do. Come on. Just go one step further and admit, you know.
Yeah.
Just because it's fake, I still want to see it.
Yeah.
Well, that's like with the, you know, how people now are taking a picture of their dear beloved passed mom and they have a program that makes it sing.
Yeah.
I still want that. You know, I still want, even if it's fake, I don't care if they fake it. I still want to see it. And I want to be able to judge that for myself. And I want to be able to open up my imagination and my mind and my thought pattern. I want to be able to do all that. I want the liberty to do that. I'm, as far as I know, I'm not a biological drone.
Well, I see little bits and stories like that, and I put them on my special Facebook page, Cape Girardeau's UFO Crash, America's First, I call it. And the Eisenhower Close Encounters has its own Facebook page. And I hear from some nice folks and get occasional clues from that. So if you have any information on these stories, be sure to look those up online and drop me a note.
All
Sounds good.
We're going to put links to you, to your books. Remember, if you're going to go buy the books and there is a local bookstore anywhere near you can order it from, go in there and buy it. But I'm going to put a link to his book page. I'm going to put a link to everything I can find about him, including if you'll do me a favor and send me the links to those 2 other Facebook pages. I want to put them on the show notes so that people can, can do a quick, easy click and follow.
Can do.
Cool pictures.
Thanks, Paul.
Yep. Thank you very much, Paul.
Uh-huh.
Thanks everyone for your comments and your enticing thoughts. And
See you next Friday.
Yeah, we'll see you next Friday, and I'll be back on here at 5 with the old man is actually coming on tonight. Well, he just tried calling a minute ago. So maybe not. But we want to talk some Donna Reed and the museum and, get some information out. Anyways, thanks for joining us. And we will see you guys next Friday at noon.
Have a great week.